In at the Side. This is episode number 14, brought to you by Dodger Sevens. Today, I'm hosting the show. I'm joined by regulars JK and Dom Hardman. And also, today's guest is this guy.
Conversion, and Warriors were back to a full complement when George Chuter nicked the ball on 28 minutes and crossed for a 10-3 lead. The Red.
So welcome along. Thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Cabin fever well and truly set in, but surviving, still trucking.
That's the main thing. Isn't it? And what are you doing to sort of keep yourself busy in lockdown at the moment?
Not too much, to be honest. Just sort of walking the dog. I think I've watched all of YouTube. Shopping. But yeah, just I don't know, anything really. Just sort of try and keep your mind off the fact that you're stuck indoors most of the day. But yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? It's not ideal, but everyone's in the same boat, so you can't complain too much.
Fair enough.
So yeah, when you say you've watched all of YouTube, does that mean you've watched the whole of our podcast series so far then?
Actually, they're the 13 videos I've got to do to finish YouTube. So sorry.
You can give us some tips on it anyway. I'm sure there's some tips we can pick up from them. Now, obviously, you had a massive playing career. Played at Saracens, went to Leicester as well. Won, I think, 7 titles and 2 European Championships.
Yeah.
What was the transition like from going from playing constantly week in, week out to suddenly stopping and retiring and not carrying on?
Actually, relatively easy. I think I got to a stage where, probably for the last 5 or 6 years of my career, my body was on the sort of the downslope and things were sort of starting to fall off and not work like they're supposed to. So you spend a lot of that time kidding yourself mentally, telling yourself you're okay, you're fit to play, you're fit to train. You're trying to convince yourself that things don't hurt as much as they do. And then it got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore. I actually remember it quite vividly. I played my last game for Leicester was at Bath at Welford Road, against Bath at Welford Road. Sat on the bench, came on for the last sort of 25 minutes or so, got yellow carded within 5 minutes. So I basically ended up only playing about 10, 15 minutes of the game and woke up on the Sunday morning or maybe the Monday it was to go to training, and I was in bits for my back, my knees, my ankles. I had to roll myself out of bed and sort of walk down the stairs backwards, and I just sort of sat there thinking to myself. I had a cup of coffee at breakfast and I was thinking, what the hell are you doing? This is not fun. This is not what you don't enjoy this. And I retired about 3 weeks later. And it was that quick. And I always say to myself that when you stop enjoying it, so I loved training. I loved, obviously playing was great. I loved training. I loved being around the club. I loved everything to do with the game. And I always said to myself, when that sort of starts to wane and you actually question what you're doing, that's the time to give up. And I went play for 18 years, so I sort of squeezed that the tube of toothpaste right dry, and at the end it was very quick. And I guess the writing had been on the wall for a couple of years with some younger guys coming in and new guys getting signed, and you can only turn back the tide of age for so long. But yeah, it was pretty quick at the end, and I wouldn't say I was definitely ready for it. It was obviously a big wrench, but the decision was pretty much out of my hands. It was more sort of thinking about the future and thinking about being able to sort of relatively live a half decent life after playing, or carry on and just potentially do yourself some serious damage. But yeah, I won't lie. The first week after announcing retirement, where the weekend goes by and then you wake up Monday morning and you've got nowhere to be. For sort of legal, I was still in mid-sort of contract, so for legal reasons I couldn't go out and get another job. I couldn't go and basically I didn't do anything. I wasn't allowed to do anything until it was all tied up and all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. So yeah, just sort of at home, nowhere to be, nothing to do, no one telling me what time training was or who's your kit washed and all that. Yeah, and it was very strange. It was just a very strange period, that sort of the first month really, in some ways. The season was still going on strong, and Tigers were thereabouts in the Premier League where they were at the time. I think sort of top 3. So the season was still going on, and I was just sort of sat at home. And I was in quite a lot of pain, actually quite a lot of discomfort in the back at the time. So I genuinely just sort of sat in a chair and not been able to do much else, and it was all very, very strange. Considering 18 years previously. You're out training 5 or 6 times a week. So it was a strange period. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it wasn't as hard as it could have been. Certainly not as hard as it's been for some people I know.
No, fair enough. Do you still keep in touch with any of the lads from Leicester or Saracens? Any lads still at Saracens?
Yeah. We've got a couple of WhatsApp groups with a few of the Saracens boys that I played. You have to bear in mind that most of the guys I played with in the beginning were all amateurs, and they might have played a year or two at the beginning of the professional era. But I signed for Saracens in 1996, which was the first full professional season. So a lot of these guys were 35, 36 at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, 20 odd years later, they're all old buggers now. But yeah, we keep in touch. Most of them still live around the sort of London and the South East. So I work down there a bit and catch up with probably half a dozen, maybe 10 of them, once or twice a year. A few of them work in the city, so I see a few of them. Same really with the Leicester guys. Most of us still live relatively local to Leicester, certainly in the county. So yeah, we sort of bump into each other here and there, working, and we try and get together a couple of times a year as sort of an old players crew. Maybe a couple of games, or go meet in a pub somewhere for Christmas or whatever. But yeah, so I think it's the same as I think blokes around the world are all the same. I think you sort of don't see each other for 15 years. You meet up and suddenly everyone just picks up where they left off, and it's the old nicknames come out and the old stories come out. That's exactly the same for us. Although we actually live within about 50 miles of everyone, you don't see each other very often. But when you do, it's usually good fun. In fact, we had a Zoom quiz the other night. Actually, there was about 30. Leicester, Leon Lloyd arranged it. So that was actually good fun to see a few guys.
Where did you place?
Terrible actually. It was all sort of very. So Leon Lloyd created a quiz. So he did a good job actually, but it was all sort of very centred around his early part of the club. It's just before I joined, so I knew a few of the stories, but it was all a little bit over my head. But I was in the top 10, I think, which I was quite happy with. But yeah, some of the guys. Jamie Hamilton lives in New Zealand now. He works for the All Blacks as the video analyst. A couple of guys living in France, Australia. So it was good. It was great to catch up with those guys who I've genuinely not seen. Someone like Perry Freshwater, who was a really good mate of mine. I've not seen him for about 10 years now. So
I guess that's the silver lining coming out of what's going on now, is that sort of things happening.
Yeah.
Probably now spending more time talking to people. The old thing that he talks to his mum now more than.
It's true.
He says that so much as waiting for the hello mum. But yeah, you start to see these people and you're like, oh my God, why is it taking a pandemic serious as this? Just have a bit of a chat and a giggle on a Zoom or a team.
Yeah. Well, so when it first came out with all the stuff and everyone was doing Zoom meetings, it was all a bit of an object of ridicule, wasn't it? It's like, Zoom's this, Zoom that, But actually, yeah, it's been a cracking like I say, a cracking reason to get in touch with some more places.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. And in terms of staying active and stuff like that, have you been tempted to do any like skills videos? You've seen some of these sick skills videos on the internet. Maybe passing on some of your knowledge and line-out skills onto younger players, anything like that?
I haven't been tempted. I'm a pretty keen cricketer. I play cricket for Lord's Taverners, which is the sort of the cricket equivalent of the Wooden Spoon, I suppose, charity. Mm-hmm. And very early on, there was a bit of a challenge of doing keepy ups with a tennis ball and a cricket bat handle. And I did that, and I got all dressed up in the garden in my cricket gear, the whites and the pads and all that. But I don't know. I've not sort of jumped on that bandwagon yet. I guess another 3 or 4 weeks left in lockdown. I might have to do something to keep myself sane. But the skills videos, I don't know. It's not really for me, to be honest. But if someone out there wants me to do it, they'll give me a shout and I'll see if I can put something together. But I'll warn you, I'm not very good on video, so it's not my best medium.
No worries. Now, going back to your Premiership days, in terms of, I'm a Gloucester fan. You might have heard from that. Yeah. Which team out of any in the Premiership did you least like playing against? Which ones did you think, oh, for fuck's sake, we're playing them again?
Probably Leicester, really.
Leicester.
Well, it was funny because the first 4 years when I was at Saracens, there was a real big rivalry. Obviously, it's still pretty big today, but. For some reason, it wasn't a local derby. Obviously, it's Leicester against a North London rugby club. But there was a real animosity, I think, because Leicester were very much the old order, the old established order. And then Saracens come along with Nigel Ray and had a bit of money and were signing some flashy international players. So I think there was a bit of resentment, certainly from the Leicester side. And I remember we played, I don't know, 8 or 9 games in the sort of late 90s, mid to late 90s, and they were proper wars. And there was a real bad blood between the clubs and the supporters. Players were all right. You meet up with the guys with England and that, and it wasn't too bad. But genuinely, on match days, it was a real bitter rivalry. So if you'd asked me in 1999 or 2000, would you fancy playing for Leicester? Although they were the best team around, I'd have laughed in the face. No thanks. I hate them. Just spent the last 4 years kicking lumps out of each other. And then you come up to Welford Road, and back then, you drive it. We used to stay at there's a Hilton Hotel just by the M1. So you'd stay out on the motorway, get the coach in through about 2 or 3 council estates into Welford Road in the middle of town. Real sort of bear pit of an atmosphere. Really sort of passionate. So we say passionate supporters who didn't mind giving you some on the sideline. And then you'd invariably get your ass kicked, and then you'd go home again. And it's like, well, Leicester's horrible. It's no fun at all. For that first sort of 3 or 4, I mean, we had some pretty Saracens had some good rivalries with London clubs, obviously sort of derby types, particularly Wasp. But yeah, Leicester were a particularly unpleasant team to play against. But then I end up, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I end up playing up here, and it's been, it was the best move I made in my life, and still live up here. I absolutely love it up here. It was much better playing for the fans, playing for their team, and playing in the same team as Martin Johnson and Darren Garfield. It was far better doing that than it was playing against them, I can assure you.
Well, it's funny you should mention Martin Johnson, because my brother went to university in Leicester. Went to visit him quite often. I didn't go to uni. I was in University of Life, saved a lot of money that way.
Well,
that's why I'm so clever. A few times, and he was telling me about this one story. I wasn't there, unfortunately. He was stood 6 deep at the bar. I can't remember which bar it was. He was getting shoved in the back. He was like, "Fuck off! Stop shoving me!" Like, happened 2 or 3 times. On the 3rd time, he spun round and he went, "Martin, do you want to go forward?" It was Martin Johnson, and he just ushered him straight to the bar. He just
they were great. The old Welford Road used to have, I think 15 or 16 bars, all dotted around the grounds. And after the games, we used to go. There's a bar called the Droglights, which is an anagram of Old Tigers, a sort of former players' bar. And we used to go in there after the games, and lads would be behind the bar serving beers, and have all the match day squad would be in there, a load of the sort of extra players, all the old players, then about 100 odd sort of fans, and it was room, about the size of someone's living room. It's tiny. It's a tiny bar. Everyone just crammed in. Those are great days, great atmospheres. Usually we won as well. So it was a happy place. It was a fun place to be. But I get it. The game's moved on, and it's all very professional now. But this was professional rugby still, late 90s, sort of first 3 or 4 years of the professional game, and people still talk about it. I still get fans talking to you about now all the fun times we had in the Droglights. We used to do an end of season 3-legged race as well. So we'd be in the changing rooms, get with a partner, take your leg together, and then he'd race around the bar. You have to have a beer in every bar. So it's 15 or 16.
The best partner to have. Who was the partner that everyone thought to have?
Oh, well, so the best drinkers would have been someone like Garforth, but actually the people who used to win that sort of competition were people like Leon Lloyd and Lewis Moody, who found ways to cheat. They're terrible drinkers, but they used to find ways to sort of get around it all, and tipping beers over everything like that. So, but again, the fans were still there. An hour after the game had finished, so we'd be in our kit, maybe sling a pair of trainers on, but in our kit, running around the bars having beers, and then we'd either go to the Drogs or go to one of the other bars, and we get kicked out about sort of 10 p.m. It was
now you only see one player doing that, and that's Andy Good. Back then, you've got a team of them. Now we've got one Sarries player who's an absolute animal.
Going back to
sorry, go on now. You go.
No, I was just going to ask one question relating to that. When you were playing, you touched on it briefly. Now I'm sort of similar, I'm a little bit older than me. You won't mind me saying, but I'm similar sort of age range to yourself. When I started playing rugby, I didn't play to any high level, but there was no social media. There was no emphasis on people being watched all the time. Do you think the pressures on professional rugby players nowadays are more than when you first started?
Much more, yeah. And I've been fairly honest about this over the last, I don't know, 10 years. So I feel sorry for young players now. I feel sorry for young players coming through the sort of rugby system, because rugby still is that game at heart. It's still a social game. It's, the professionalism is less than 0.1% of the players in this country are professional. So that's I don't know, 250,000, 300,000 rugby players in the country who still play like they did when we were kids. They go out and have beers and they play because they love the crack, they love the game, they love the social bit. And I genuinely think young players now miss out on that. And I understand. I played in the professional era, and it was great for me, and had a great time, and it was a fantastic living and all that. But I'd have played it anyway. I'd played rugby anyway, even if it ended up professional. And I think part of that was the sort of the fun we had. And I'm not talking about just going to boozing and being stupid, but actually having fun, going out there, playing on a Saturday. You obviously want to win. Everyone wants to win, but if you lose, people aren't going to be asking for your job and giving you all this sort of grief. Whereas now you've got sort of 15-year-old kids who want to be professional players. They don't ever get to experience the fun of going on tour, going to Bognor Regis for a long weekend over Easter, or Butler Minehead, or something like that. Some of those sort of tours that we used to do. Isle of Man or the Isle of Wight, something like that. They don't do that anymore. They don't get through it because from 15 years old, their one goal is to be a professional player. And unfortunately, the reality is very, very few of them make it. And actually, they don't get to experience the game that I assume we all sort of grew up loving.
It ends up to the fact that they've wasted their time. And then they kind of fall out of love with the game.
And I coached at Loughborough Uni for 3 years just after I finished playing. And we had pretty much every year, you get sort of 10 or 15 lads coming through the door who have been in academies, various Premiership academies, not quite made it because you're too short, too slow, too small, whatever it was. So they've spent the last 5 years building themselves up to have their bubble burst. And then they're genuinely hating the game. They're, I don't want to play anymore. I'll go and play for sort of like the fourth team and have a social Wednesday, whatever it is. Yeah, and these are kids who play for England 20s, England 18s, good players. So part of your job there was actually getting them to fall back in love with the game, getting to enjoy the game again, and getting to realise that actually there's a different pathway back into the professional game. If you're not ready at 17, 18 years old, it doesn't mean you'll never be ready. But the first biggest hurdle was actually getting them to enjoy rugby again, which was hard work.
And at the same time, obviously, we're a big advocate of mental health. That sort of thing is key because it's a big knock at such a young age, at 17, 18. Your mental health just completely plummets. I mean, it's under 20s. You're like, oh yeah. So then
it's a much tougher world. I mean, I'm sounding old now. It's a much tougher world to grow up in now. I've got teenage daughters, so I know the pressures kids are under from social media, all that sort of stuff, which again is inevitable. It's part of what we are. But again, casting my mind back to when I was sort of 17, 18 years old, I couldn't, no idea what I wanted to do, just enjoying playing rugby, playing cricket, whatever it was, not enjoying school too much. But, I didn't feel that pressure to do anything or be anyone, or if I was a bit overweight, I didn't care. I probably was. We had fat kids and skinny kids at school, and that was it. No one got into sort of downward mental spiral because of a couple of bits of teasing at school. But now it's people doing it remotely from all over the world to give you grief, whether it's talk about kids or talk about players, athletes who have to face criticism or that. It goes back to the original point. I don't think it's a lot of fun anymore being a professional sportsman. I genuinely don't.
So you talk about obviously you've seen both sides of the game. When it was amateur and then when it sort of started becoming more professional. Yeah. Was it a gradual change for you going into the professional standards, or was it overnight? It was a change of attitude, or
it was a really funny time actually, and it comes back to what I was saying earlier. A lot. So the Saracens team I joined, we had I think about 12, maybe 14 full-time players on full-time contracts, and we were brought in. This is from June 96 onwards for pre-season. They said, right, you're coming in, be at the club 8:30 in the morning, and you can go home 4:30 because you're a full-time employee. That's full-time office hours. So we come in and we train on Monday to Friday, train 3.5 hours in the morning on the field, 3.5 hours in the afternoon on the field, pretty much with a break for lunch. Or we do 2 hours, 2.5 hours in the gym. Again, completely mindless compared to today's sort of standards. But that was it. You're a full-time player, so that's what you've got to do. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we come back and we train with the other 30 guys or 25 guys who are teachers and lawyers and accountants now, who are part-time. And then the Saturday team was made up of the majority of the new full-time players, and then quite a few of last year's first team guys. And then that meant the second team I played most of my rugby in my first year at Sarries was the previous year's first team. So it was a really good bunch of lads, really good players. Some guy, we had a guy called John Buckton who played 2 or 3 times for England in the late 80s. He was in the second team with me and playing centre. And he was a great guy, great to learn off. We had 2 really old wizened props who'd been around the national leagues for years. So we played every team home and away. So we played 26, 28 games. Every Saturday we had a game.
Nice.
Me playing loads of rugby, getting paid for it. Well, not necessarily getting paid for the second team rugby, but getting paid for training. Then we had an Anglo-Welsh league that ran on a Wednesday night. So I played, I don't know, about 13 or 14. They were first team games, 13 or 14 first team games for that. And then sat on the bench a few times in the Premiership. So I ended up playing about between 35 and 40 odd games of rugby that year. This is coming from pretty much fresh out of school. I've been out of school for a year, played for my school's old boys team in London, in sort of been level 6 now. It's just one below national leagues. So it was a real sort of strange step up. And actually the rugby was a bit tougher, but you've got to bear in mind that everyone was amateur the previous year. So even the sort of the Leicesters and the Bass at the time, they weren't a million times better than the teams in sort of level 4, level 5, because players were all still part-time. Yes, they had better players, but so the gulf wasn't that big, whereas now between levels sort of 1, 2, 3 and 4, the gaps are huge. So in terms of playing rugby, I could do that, I could do the physical bit. I was quite big from age, I had no problem with that. The training I loved, and suddenly I'm just a full-time player, and it was just like, well, no one knew how to do it. No one knew how to coach full-time. Our head coach was a headmaster. He was still teaching. In fact, he just gave up work to do his full-time. But yeah, no one had told him how to coach full-time. No one had told him how to structure a training week, how to prepare for a game on a Saturday or a Wednesday. We had a guy called Matthew Yates who used to run 1,500 metres for Great Britain. His dad, Mike, was our fitness guy. He was our fitness guy. He was our weights training guy. He was our sprint guy. And he did everything. So we all did everything as a squad. And like I say, you go to the gym and there'd be 6 sets of 10 this, 6 sets, and you'd be in a David Lloyd gym in North London for 3 hours, and you come out and that was your training, that was your weights. So yeah, it was just a very sort of strange time where everyone was still feeling their way in. But again, like I say, it was good fun. We had good fun. It was people were keen and excited because it was a new era. But rules. It was a blind leading the blind. It really was.
So how then obviously you talk about the rivalry between Saracens and Leicester. How did that move then come about?
Me moved to Leicester.
Yeah.
Well, I played at Saracens for 4 years, so 96 to 2000, and I'd been involved with England in 97, 98, went on tour in 98. So I'd had about 2 weeks off between seasons for 3 seasons. I ended up playing. I think I played 92 games for Sarries in 4 years, pretty much. So there's a lot of rugby and not much of a turnaround in between. And I was out of contract in 2000 in June, and Sarries wanted me to stay. They'd offered me a new one, and I looking back now, these days you'd call it burnt out. I was a bit burnt out. I was just at the time I was bored. I wasn't enjoying rugby. I wasn't enjoying training. It was a long old grind. Like I say, we'd started to get a bit more professional, but it was still very long days, very long weeks. The seasons went, I think, 99, 2000 season, we started with the first league game about 14th of August. And then we played all the way through until, went on tour as well. So I played all the way till June, end of June, really, mid-June. There were 28 league games. There were 15 teams in the Premiership at the time. So you played 28 rounds of Premiership. Cup games, again, if you got to the final, there were 6 more games, and European games, there were another 6. So yeah, there's mid-40s worth of games there, and we played Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday quite a bit as well, certainly 4 or 5 times in the season. So that's a hell of a treadmill to be on, and just got to the end of my contract. I thought, I can sign a new contract here, or I can I can actually just take a break. I don't want to sign a contract and let people down, let the fans down more to the point, but let myself down, let my teammates down. So I said, I'm just going to take a bit of a break. I'm going to walk away for a bit. I'm going to do a bit of travelling. At the time, actually, I was thinking about genuinely going to live somewhere abroad and perhaps play a year in Australia or something, whatever. Sort of that was reported at the time. I was walking away to go and start a new life. But I spoke to one of the journos, and that sort of came up, and he took it and ran with it, as they do.
Nice.
But so I left Sarries in June of 2000 and went on a bit of a walkabout. I stayed in the UK for a bit and caught up with some mates I've not seen for years from school and all that. Then I spent a month in Australia in September for the Olympics. And then I spent a month with my wife, my girlfriend back then, wife now. She was working in North Carolina for a year, so I went and stayed with her for a month. Came back to UK sort of early December 2000, and he was my agent at the time, but he was more of a mate of mine. He sort of put my name around behind my back in a way. I'd not decided on whether I was going to come back or not and play, but he put my name around and he gave me a bell early December. I've got 3 clubs would like to have a chat with me about possibly joining them now to start after Christmas. And one of them was Leicester, and I was like, oh, actually, yeah, I quite fancy giving it a crack, playing again. Leicester's not too far from London. It's hour and a half. The other 2 were a bit further north. So I went up and met Dean Richards, who was my hero when I was a young lad, and he took me into the meeting room, said, "We really want you here." And I said, "Thanks, Dean. Where do I sign?" And that was it. That was about 10th of December. I signed the contract, and I started just after Christmas and moved up here just before Christmas. And yeah, that was it. That was the end.
He's not a guy you turn down, is he? When he wants you to sign, just go, yes, what would you like me to? Sorry.
He was genuine, and still is. He still is my rugby idol. I love watching him, but then I'd never met him. So I played against Leicester, like I say, 9 or 10 times, and actually I had a few good games. And I sort of walked in. I didn't know how to talk. Him and John Wells were there. I'd never met Wellesley, and again, I knew Wellesley by reputation. I've watched him on TV, and I knew these boys are pretty handy. But he sat there, and Dean was like, we want you, and you've played against us a few times, and we like what we see. I think you can really add. And I was like, geez, I was expecting him to say, well, why do you want to come and play at Leicester? And I was completely unprepared. I was like, I hate you guys, but he was just so positive, and I'd been back to speak to Francois Pienaar at Sarries before that because I didn't want to just sort of pop up again and not speak to them. They didn't have any room in the squad at the time. They'd already filled their slots, but I didn't want to go back there. I thought it actually just needed a bit of a complete change of scenery. So it all just sort of fell into place quite nice. And like I say, Dean was great when I met, and it took about 2 weeks to get everything sorted out, and that was it, done and dusted.
Out of your whole career, then, what is your biggest rugby experience or your best ever match? What's the one that really sticks with you?
Well, it's difficult. I was fortunate enough to play a long time. I played a lot of games. I played something like 450 odd games as well in the professional era. And I also was fortunate enough to play in some good teams and with some of the best players probably of all time. So I always find it different, and I probably have a different answer every time someone asks me that. I've probably got about sort of 20 or 30 I could pick from. But I mean, obviously your first cap is memorable. And actually, my first 2 caps were in Australia in 2006. I'd waited a long time. I'd been involved with England, I'd say late sort of 97, 98, and I went out of sort of fell out of favour really, I suppose, for that sort of World Cup period in 99, 2003. Then I sort of resurfaced, and so I didn't get capped until I was just before my 30th birthday in Australia. And actually, I played really well my first 2 games. I was on the bench for the first one in Sydney, came on, made a bit of an impact, and then I played pretty well in the second test in Melbourne. I started that. Scored a try as well, actually. But yeah, so they're memorable. But I mean, yeah, the World Cup final was memorable as well for different reasons. We lost it, but it's still something that I have a lot of pride about. But then, I mean, I can think of a bunch of games playing for, probably mainly for Leicester. We had some good games at Saracens, but Leicester, we go to some places where we weren't expecting to win, and you sort of grind out a win with some good mates, and those sort of nights just as memorable as the big sort of flashy first cap or World Cup finals for me. I do find it very, because I think I've never really been one for sort of the individual stuff. I don't keep any memorabilia. I don't sort of look back at my career and think, oh, I did this or that. All my memories are about good times I had with good mates and good blokes, good players. So that sort of means I find it very. You ask me which game I played best in, I'd have no idea. It just doesn't register with me. I always think about those sort of. Invariably, a good game is followed by a good night, particularly if you're away from home and you're in somewhere exotic. So those sort of things are far more stronger memories for me than any of the individual stuff, to be honest.
I'm sure I can find out from some of my wife's family who are Leicester fans which ones were your best games and very worst. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Oh, right. I look forward to it.
Obviously, I'm going to pull away from rugby slightly. So I see you're a proud patron of Scotty's Little Soldiers.
Yeah, that's right.
Having played for Scotty's Tigers a few times and knowing the setup with the Scotty's Tigers people.
Sorry, mate, breaking up a bit.
Oh, is that better? Oh, it's not.
Hello?
Oh, you're back.
George?
I can still hear you. I'm just checking the internet. I think my Wi-Fi is terrible here.
I was going to say, normally it's my side, and given I'm the tech guy, I'm the most technical one out of the lot. It's always my internet.
Sorry about that, mate. So that's question again, yeah.
Obviously, I played for Scottish Tigers a few times. I know the Sevens team, and I know the setup there, and I know Vicky fairly well. How did that all come about? What was your drive to become a patron of such a very one I'm a big advocate of? Yeah,
it actually was quite strange because they started off as a tiny charity in Kings Lynn, like a container out of Kings Lynn they worked as, whatever. So they were a tiny charity, and what had been about 2009, something like that, 2008, 2009. Ben Kay had a testimonial year here at Leicester, and he chose Scottys as one of his charities. He had Scottys and Matt Hampson, I think, Help the Heroes. So I first met Nicky and Stu at one of Ben's functions, sort of like 2008, 2009, that sort of time. And my family's got quite a lot of military history, particularly tank regiment as well. My brother's in the tank regiment, so I immediately felt quite a strong affinity to them. Met Nicky, met Stu, just really great people. I remember Nicky's, I think it must have been the first time she stood up in front of a room full of people and told her story. And it was just mesmerising. And she's not a public speaker. She's far better now than she was. But back then she was just a squaddy's wife. And she was just driving this charity because of her experiences with her son and Brooke was 6 months old at the time, but her son, 4 years old, I think it was, he had special educational needs. Someone's got to tell him his dad's not coming back from Afghanistan, and her story was just absolutely breathtaking. And so I was happy to get involved that year with Benny's charities and obviously Scottys in particular. And then I had a benefit year a couple of years later, and I'd been in touch with Scottys over that time, and we'd done a couple of lunches and dinners for them in London, and basically sort of trying to help raise their profile. And I adopted them as one of my charities as well. And so I got to know Nicky and Stu better, and then some of the new guys, well, not new guys, but the guys that have been there from the beginning that I'd not met, became good mates with them, got involved with the 24-hour rugby stuff that's now about 28 hours.
Snowballing.
And Nicky asked me, I don't know, probably about, just around that sort of benefit year after that, she asked me if I'd be an ambassador, and I was happy to do it. It was just, like I say, there's millions of charities out there, and they're all great. It's very difficult to pick, but it just really rang home to me, the military side of it, the kids side of it. My kids were relatively young at the time as well, and then just actually meeting Nicky and meeting Stu and meeting the people who just working so hard and so selflessly. It was just it was great. I don't see them a lot now. I still try and do what I can for them. They picked up a lot more momentum, which is great. They've got some pretty big backers. They've got some big. They've been in the tabloids a bit, which is great. But they're still the same people, which is fantastic. And those sort of small sort of local charities really drive it home to me. work with Matt Hampson quite a lot. He's obviously a bit bigger now, but he's a mate of mine. I do some work with big charities. Like the Taverners is a sort of a nationwide thing, a big, well-established charity. But those sort of little charities like Scottys, I think they're just great, and they need as much help as we can give them, I think.
Yeah, and it's great to see such, as you said, 2009. Obviously, when it happened, obviously Corporal Scott didn't come home, and what she did, and obviously from a mental health perspective, she could have gone on a spiraling downward spiral.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the resilience I think she showed, not just for her but for her kids and her family, to put that momentum into something like this has been absolutely inspiring.
Yeah,
and it just shows to a lot of people, and I hope people who listen to this, that no matter the situation, there is something else you can do about.
Yeah. I mean,
but the downward spiral, you can hit the drink, you can absolute mental, or you can take that energy and push it out somewhere else.
Yeah, sometimes it devalues. People use words like inspiring and great. Sometimes you don't really appreciate the word you're using. But when you meet people like Nick, you meet people like Matt Hampson. These people are inspirational. They're doing something that I don't think I would be in their position able to do. And like I said, pulling yourself out of the sort of despairing pit that she was in, to turn herself into what she is now. She's remarried and got new kids and everything like that, and she's still driving this charity forward. There is no other word. It is inspirational, and I don't like to dilute it too much, but that's great. It's true.
No, it is, and I think it should, and that sort of word should be said for the people like, as I say, Matt, Guy, Captain Tom, for example.
He's
worked for the NHS. Obviously, he deserves a big mention because it's his 100th birthday.
This is
to mention for that one. Obviously, moving forward slightly, obviously after rugby, you obviously I had a brief look at your Twitter before we did all this. That's under the posts. More about that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sort of speaking goes hand in hand. There's loads of ex-players out there doing that. I've been involved with under the post for a long time now. Tony Andrews, who founded it and owned the owner. He got to know guys like Martin Johnson and Darren Garforth, Dorian West back in the early 2000s, because those guys are massive Scar fans, so they love Madness, they love Clash, all this sort of stuff. You wouldn't believe it. See these big idiots moshing in a sort of a pub in Leamington. It's incredible. But
with
Tony,
their Doc boots, Doc Martens.
Seriously,
Doc Martens suspenders.
They're
There's
like
a few down south that I've gone to. Scar Tonics, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, but Tony grew up with a lot of those sort of musicians. He grew up in the West Country, so he knew a lot of these guys. So he could get tickets. He could sort of get the lads behind back the stage and all that. So he got friendly with these guys. Tony was working in IT at the time, hating it, and was looking for something else to do. I think it was either Matt Paul or the Garth or the ABC Club had a testimonial year that year. Like I say 2001, I think it might have been 2002, something like that. And they said, Tony, would you get some people along, try and sort of put a lunch or a dinner on for us? He had no experience about it, and he thought, yeah, I'll do it. I'll get people there, get some players there, get some my friends, and see if we can get some musicians. And he did a couple of these things, one-off things, and eventually he sort of jacked the IT stuff in and went full time and founded this company. And so I got involved with him then. I'd go and do Q&As for the lads and just sit on the panel and talk crap and trying to entertain them and stuff. And so I sort of he was doing more and more stuff over the years, and I kept getting involved. Obviously, having a bit of profile playing for England helped. So I was eventually doing afternoon speaking on my own as sort of a job to supplement what I was doing rugby wise. And actually, I never had a problem with it. I never had a problem with speaking in public, and I shouldn't be judging myself. I think it can be quite amusing. I've got some stories. I've certainly got some experiences that I talk about. And they are true as well. People don't believe that, but they are true. So I did this all the way through while I was playing, and kept ticking over. I suppose more than anything. I didn't do it very often, but I did it often enough.
Tell us a story that not many people know from one of the nights out back in the day. Tell us.
On the spot.
Well, yeah. So those sort of stories. Yeah, I mean.
You have to pay for these, Neil.
Yeah, well, I don't normally tell those sort of stories, to be honest, because those nights out are Yeah, there's some stuff that happens, some stuff face that, but a lot of the time it's what goes on tour stays on tour. But
no, that's fair.
Invariably, actually, the funny stories are more about the sort of characters in and around the squad. So when you're training, people, and you guys probably have the same sort of experience. People say and do stupid things when you're in a group of lads, and those sort of stories. And when I tell those them, they are true. When I tell them, people are like, "You just made that up, didn't you?" I'm like, "No, it's the funniest ones are the ones that are real." There are a few stories that most speakers use that do the rounds, and you just change names and venues. They may have happened at one point, but no one knows. But generally, I'd say that the funny ones are the ones that are true. Like I said, I don't. It's not all about getting drunk and setting fire extinguishers off and stuff like that, is it?
But it helps.
It does. So I carried on doing a bit of that, and then once I finished playing, I was doing quite a lot of regular stuff with Tony, and he found a sort of niche in London where we do sporting lunches and dinners, not just rugby, football, cricket. But he has access to actors and singers and celebs. So he's currently doing not currently, not now with the lockdown, but we're doing about sort of 70 or 80 events a year in a wine bar in London, and I do all the rugby ones now. Since I finished playing and coaching, I said, I quite fancy going a bit more full time with you. Can I get involved in the organisation bit? So I did a bit of that with him as well. It's just it's good fun. It's not like work, and it's about the closest thing I've got to rugby, where I sort of turned up and someone was paying me for something I would have been doing for free. Same sort of stuff.
You'll get the itch on a Saturday though to get those boots on.
No. The first year after I retired, I did some work for Leicester in the corporate side. So I hosted all the 3 rooms in the new stand. About sort of 1,000 people for a match, sort of pre-match hospitality. And my first match back, I sort of sat there, and so I do a bit before the game. I take players around, do a bit of Q&A, and basically sort of do a bit of housekeeping, blah blah. Then I go and watch the game. I come back afterwards, and we talk about the game and blah blah. So I'd done a bit, and I was sort of sat there about half an hour before kickoff, and I was like, "Wow, do you know what? This is the first game I'm back at since I've retired. So if I go out there now, I can watch this game and not wish I was out there. I know it was the right decision." And I went out and watched this game, and I was like, from about the first minute, and I was like, "Thank God I'm not out there." I didn't miss it at all. I didn't feel like I wanted to play. The atmosphere was great. It wasn't a bad game. I think Leicester actually won. And so, but I walked out afterwards. I was like, you know what, don't miss it. So I obviously made the right decision, and I've not missed it since. There's not been one game. I've been to Midlands derbies, been to a couple of Test matches, and not once have I sort of thought, "Oh, I wish I was out there." It just, I've done my time, and I've moved on, I think.
Make it sound like a custodial sentence.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're in crazy times at the moment. Everyone's talking about COVID-19.
Here we go.
Here we are.
This is why they wanted me to introduce myself as
Scenario ONeil.
Scenario ONeil. Yeah, this is what they.
We need to get. We need to get
scenario.
jingle.
No. The last. So we can chat about that. But the last time we nearly ended it before he got his chance to, it was whoa.
Yeah.
We haven't done the scenarios yet.
Yeah. So basically, right, the scenario is you're in lockdown. Okay, you're in a house for 2 weeks. You literally cannot leave the house at all. You're having food brought to you, drinks brought to you. Now you're in that house with one person. Who would make it an absolute living hell from someone you played rugby with?
Oh, living hell.
Who would be the worst person to be locked
Lewis
in?
Moody. See, I don't even think about that.
Wow.
Why is that?
Because he's like a hyperactive Labrador. He would not be able to sit still, and he's sort of like he'd be sitting there watching TV. I didn't live with him, thank God, but Geordie Murphy and Leon Lloyd lived with him for years. And he can't just sit still on bed. He's not doing something. He's up and about. He'd be like, "Do you want to go chuck a tennis ball around the garden?" No, it's raining. "Oh, do you want to go do some press ups or something like that?" He just would not be able to keep still. So 2 weeks locked up in a room with him, he'd be bouncing off the walls. And he's a prankster. So he'd be hiding around the corner, scaring you, or be putting salt in your coffee or whatever, trying to hit you in the nuts every 5 minutes.
I'd love to put him into Big Brother now and see how.
Do you know what he would be genuinely? Mudos is a lovely bloke. He's a great bloke. He's genuinely one of life's good guys. But he is just like a puppy. You have to keep him entertained, or he'll tear your clothes to shreds or something like that. It'd be great to watch because he would not. There would not be a dull moment. He would be the bloke. So come on, lads, let's have a glitter fight in the car.
Why is that the first thing you thought of? Glitter fight, the first thing you thought.
Well, I don't know. It's just because
he's
the sort of bloke that would have glitter.
There's something you need to tell us. No worries. Well, unless anyone else got any other questions, I think that kind of pretty much wraps up for tonight.
I still want to know who's been doing your Wikipedia.
Who's been doing
what? What does it say on Wikipedia?
98 kilos.
There was 98 kilos at one point.
Was?
I should play my test rugby at 98 kilos. So I'd have been that for between about 2005, 2010, and then I ballooned.
To be fair, I was reading through it. At one point, it did mention saying you were part of the 2006-2007 winning team for Heineken Cup, and I'm sat there going, "What?"
I win.
He's definitely been on here.
Yeah.
I've not actually looked at it. We used to. They went through a phase where me and Benny Kay and about 5 or 6 of us used to go on each other's Wikipedia and change it to change this. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff. You're bored off the train. You're sat there. There's like a row of MacBooks over there. So, should go and change Benny's.
Ben Kay has a third nipple.
Yeah,
I think
stupid stuff like that.
I think you should go and do it again.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
You've got the time, haven't you? You've got the time.
No, actually, I've got the time now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll get Ben. We'll get Ben. You do it. Let us know. We'll get Ben K on at some point, and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on tonight, George. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
No problem, guys.
Hopefully, we can get you on again in the future when the rugby starts up again. Get some hot topics to run past you if that's right yourself.
Yeah.
Well, basically say how Leicester's not going to be in top 4 because Wasps are going to be there.
Top 4. I don't think Leicester be top 9.
To be fair, they were saved this season.
Yeah.
They were saved. What happened?
With your allegiance,
funny enough, your 2 former clubs.
yeah, true.
with your allegiance to Surrey, just a quick question: how do you think you're going to get on next season? Do you think you're going to bounce straight back up?
Surrey's, yeah. I don't think there'll be too much of a problem with that.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on Itoje being stopped going over to France?
Well, I see it, and I think first and foremost, I actually agree with that policy of not picking people who are playing abroad. I mean, it's a difficult situation. If you've got the opportunity to earn sort of 10 times the amount of money you'd earn in the Championship, then it's difficult to say no. But them's the rules. If he wants to play for England,
Because Eddie was for it.
Yeah. Well,
I guess for it. Yeah. The opposing teams were like, not a.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing about it, it's a strange situation that these guys are going on loan. So basically, what these clubs are doing are keeping Saracens players fresh and sharp for year after, which seems a bit strange to me. But
but then it's the balance to keep them fresh for obviously England duty.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
you don't want to be sending them after either time off with Rusty. We all get rusty.
Yeah.
Or going into England camps and other team members going, well, they barely played. How the hell did they go on current form?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a strange situation.
We could talk about that all day, couldn't we? It's one of those things, and it's innate.
Well, it's a new thing that came out in the rugby news, so I brought it up.
Well done, JK. Well done. You couldn't be.
Very limited rugby news we have at the moment.
Yes.
Well, once again, thank you very much, George. We'll leave you to it now. It's been an absolute pleasure, and speak soon. Hopefully.
Cheers, guys.